Welcome to BIOB 160, Principles of Living Systems. I'm Ruth Reitzman, your instructor for the course. In this unit, we will explore the basic themes of biology. Let's get started. In this unit, we'll explore three topics. First, we will examine the definition of life and examine the characteristics shared by all living organisms. Next, we will look at the core themes of biology and see how these themes connect the study of living things. Finally, we'll examine the process of science and look at how this is applied to the study of living organisms. As you look at this picture of a hummingbird, ask yourself, what are the characteristics that are shared by all living things? What is the difference between a living organism and non-living things? Or, you might ask yourself, how do we know that something is alive? Take a moment to think about these properties and jot your ideas down in your notes. So what properties of life did you come up with? Perhaps you said movement or reproduction. If so, you're on the right track. This figure from Chapter 1 of your text summarizes the common properties shared by all living things. These include reproduction, growth and development, the ability to process energy, the ability to regulate processes, order, response to environmental stimuli, and evolutionary adaptations. If any of these are unfamiliar to you, you can read more about them in Chapter 1 of your text. You'll have a chance to post any questions about this topic on this week's discussion board. As we go through this course, we'll be looking at each of these properties of life in more depth. Biology is the study of living organisms, and it is a very broad field. The organisms that are studied range from the tiniest microorganisms to gigantic marine mammals. Biologists work in laboratories, in field environments, and in industry. The applications of biology are used in treating human and animal diseases, developing new strains of crops, and in understanding how an organism's DNA is organized and expressed. In looking at the broad field of biology, one way to organize and connect the various facts and terms is to understand the overarching themes of biology. One overall theme of biology is that of hierarchy, or levels of life. We can start with the smallest materials that make up living things and progress to cells and organisms found on the entire planet Earth. As we build each level, we can observe emergent properties. In other words, at each level, we have properties that emerge at the higher level. Just as we might not be able to identify the function of a bicycle from looking at bicycle parts, we may not observe all of the properties of a cell by looking at the individual molecules that make up the cell. We may need to study the intact cell or organism to understand some of its properties. This figure from Chapter 1 shows the levels of biological organization. We begin with atoms, which are combined to make molecules. Molecules are arranged to form organelles, such as the chlorophyll molecule that is located in the chloroplast. The chloroplast is the organelle that carries out photosynthesis. Organelles such as the chloroplast make up the structure of cells. In this diagram, we can see a plant cell with its green chloroplast. Cells are arranged together to make up tissues. Different types of tissues make up organs and organ systems, such as this leaf. Organ systems, such as the vascular system of a tree, make up organisms. Individual organisms group up to make populations, such as the population of trees in this forest. Different populations of organisms make up communities. What organisms can you see in this forest community? You might immediately notice the deer, shrubs, and trees. But also present are populations of small organisms, such as insects, algae, fungi, and bacteria. They are all vital members of this forest community. Communities of organisms make up ecosystems. The example shown in this photo is the northern boreal forest, similar to the forest that we find around us in northwestern Montana. And finally, the ecosystems of our planet make up the biosphere, the region of the Earth that contains all living organisms. In this diagram in your text, use this diagram in your text to trace the levels of life, starting with the Earth's biosphere, through a forest ecosystem, down to the smallest atoms that make up a chlorophyll molecule. Are there any levels of life that you are unfamiliar with? If so, post your questions on this week's discussion board. Another theme of biology is the use of energy in living organisms. All life requires energy. The basic flow of energy begins with the energy in sunlight that is converted by plants, also called producer organisms. The raw materials of carbon dioxide and water are converted by plants into sugars. These sugars are then eaten by consumer organisms, such as the elephant in this photo. The energy stored in the chemical bonds of sugars is then converted into various types of energy. The energy that the elephant obtains from the leaves will be converted into kinetic energy, the energy of motion, in the elephant's muscle cells. One of the waste products of animal metabolism is carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide released from the elephant's metabolism will be incorporated by the plant to make sugars. Another theme of biological systems is the link between structure and function. An example is shown in this slide. Birds are well adapted to flight, and their adaptations include wings that are aerodynamically shaped and special bone structure with lots of cavities. The bone cavities lighten the overall weight of the bird, and the wing shape enable the bird's flight. Can you find other examples of biological structures that enable and enhance biological function? Some of these are discussed in your text in Chapter 1. Another theme of life is that all living organisms are composed of cells. A single cell can perform all of the activities needed for life. What are those activities? Think back to what we discussed earlier in this lecture, the common properties of life. If you look at the structure of all cells, they have the same basic makeup. The cell is enclosed in a cell membrane, and they have DNA as their genetic information. There are two types of cells, prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. In this figure from Chapter 1, you can see the two types of cells. Prokaryotic cells are small cells with no internal compartments. Their DNA is not enclosed in a membrane, so they lack a true nucleus and instead have their DNA free in the cytoplasm of the cell. Examples of prokaryotic cells are the bacteria and the archaea. Eukaryotic cells are larger and have their DNA enclosed in a nucleus. They also have many internal compartments called organelles. Organisms with eukaryotic cells include protozoa, fungi, algae, plants, and animals. We will explore the structure and function of eukaryotic cells in much more detail later in this course. Another theme in biology is the presence of DNA in all organisms. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, is the molecule that makes up the cell's chromosomes and serves as a blueprint for the characteristics of each organism. Each DNA molecule encodes hundreds or thousands of genes. Individual genes are the units of inheritance that encode specific traits. For example, your eye color or blood type is determined by specific genes. Genes are passed from parents to offspring during reproduction. The coding mechanism in the DNA molecule is universal for all organisms. So it doesn't matter whether you're an amoeba, an elephant, or a human, the genetic code in the DNA molecule functions in the same way. This figure shows an overview of reproduction and development. Individual eggs and sperm unite during fertilization to create a fertilized egg, containing DNA from both parents. The information in the chromosomes of the fertilized egg are expressed during the process of development. The resulting individual has characteristics derived from the DNA inherited from both parents. Finally, we will explore the overarching theme of biology, that of biological evolution. This concept was first proposed by Charles Darwin in the 1860s. Darwin's theory of descent with modification and theory of natural selection has been extensively examined and tested by biologists. Today, with the advances in molecular biology and the understanding of the action of DNA, the theory of evolution ties together all the themes in biology that we have discussed in this unit. All organisms share fundamental characteristics, and through the process of reproduction and natural selection, organisms have changed and are continuing to change over time. We will explore this topic in more detail throughout this course. This concludes this section of BIOB 160, Principles of Living Systems. To continue your study of this unit, follow the links for the MyLabs Plus Mastering Biology homework and post your questions and replies on this week's discussion board. Thanks, and have a great day.